Talofa, I'm Leiatawa Lesa Susana Leiatawa, and on the detail today...
The 50th year of Polyfest kicks off today at the Manukau Sports Bowl with 77 schools and more than 11,000 performers set to take to the stage over the next 4 days. RNZ Pacific's Moira Tuileipa is there for us. Kia ora, good morning, Moira. What is on the schedule there for today? What's going on?
The cameras have gone, the performers are back at school, and the politicians have packed up their floral shirts for another year. There was plenty of publicity for ASB Polyfest's 50th anniversary festival, an event that boasts of being the largest of its kind in the world. But behind the scenes of the cultural extravaganza, organisers are nervously tallying up the cost. They don't know if they've even managed to break even. And as they do every year, organisers say they must go back to the drawing board to find funding for next year's Polyfest.
It was a record-breaking year for us with 77 schools, 291 groups and over 11,000 students involved. And this included visiting schools from Australia and also several schools from outside of Auckland taking part in the non-competitive group performances that we run during our breaks. It's a massive year. We've gone back to and exceeded the numbers that we had pre-COVID. So it really shows the impact and the growth of this year's festival.
That's Seuli Terry Leo Mau, who's been the event director of Polyfest for the past 9 years. Hers is the only full-time paid position at ASB Polyfest.
We're still wrapping up our stats for this year, so still doing the wash-up. I'd say we were close to our 100,000 that we were expecting. We actually had quite a lot of people watching us online as well, and because for the first time, we introduced paid live stream this year because we needed to with the funding challenges. And as we're wrapping up, the early figures were showing we had 36,000 inquiries alone during the festival week on our live stream. So it shows that there is an interest from people wanting to access the festival from the comfort of their homes, or they're watching us from overseas.
Now, on Saturday, which was the last of the 4 days of Polyfest this year, you had Prime Minister Christopher Luxon attending, and you had a few words for him. Could you recap what you said?
Yeah, I think it's important for the Prime Minister to remember that everything we're doing is FTK. It's for the kids. And so the main things that I pushed there was that we need sustainable multi-year funding. Every year, we are constantly having to justify why we need funding and why we exist. And so it's really important that he understands that and for him to see it firsthand was really important too. So we're glad that he turned up on Saturday and got to walk around and see our young people at the heart of everything that we're doing. I talked about a permanent home. And this permanent home is something that I visualize will be good for everyone. It'll be a place where the festival can be run at the first half of the year or the first part of the year. And then for the rest of the year, it's a place that could probably generate income to go towards the festival the following season, where we can actually have it house other cultural activities, other festivals, other events, key, cultural meetings for our community. It'll be a home for them too. So I really think that it will be something that will benefit everyone. And then we talked about formal recognition with NZQA credits. There's already credits there, but we have designated credits for our Māori performance, but not for Pacific. So I was just really trying to push that we try to get some formal recognition in the NZQA standards for Polyfest credits that will not just benefit our ASB Polyfest, but also benefit the other Polyfests around the country.
How much does it cost to stage Polyfest every year? How much did 2025 Polyfest cost?
2025 came close to 1.7 million, and that's half of what we need to comfortably run this festival and have a backup plan for instances, unprecedented events like what happened with the rain on that Friday. So yeah, we could comfortably run it on 3 million. That would be helpful to be able to have everything that we need to make sure that the kids in the community get what they need safe-wise as well for this festival.
So the $1.7 million that it costs, is that based on how much money you have in the bank to put the festival on?
Yeah, so we in the past, I guess the funding that we did receive post-COVID, it was to help us get through COVID because it had really hit the sector hard. And when I talk about the sector, I'm talking about the event sector. So everything had gone up. All the costs for our contractors had gone up as well. And it's a niche market too in regards to insurance. Not many people will insure events, especially events that are held outside. And we are known for that. Our festival is a summer outdoor event. But the way that things are going and climate change, like we have to take into consideration that this festival may also need to have an indoor option, especially when we encountered the heavy rain that we got on that Friday.
So take me through the finances of Polyfest and why it's such a challenge financially.
That's something that I ask every year. I don't understand why we have to constantly fight for funding when we've been the longest serving Polyfest in this country and the biggest of its kind in the world. So we battle for funding because I know we're not the only festival that's going for this kind of funding, but we try to push the fact that there's no other festival that has the scope or size as our festival or has the longevity and legacy like Polyfest. But we continue fighting that. Every year I'm lobbying with grants funding and with government and local and national funding. And it always seems to be the fact that we're going for the same funding as every other festival in the country.
I'd just like to do a quick roll check to see who's here. We're just going to do it the old school way.
These people hold the keys to more investment in the festival.
Okay, Governor-General of New Zealand, present. Deputy Prime Minister.
I mean, we did a roll call on Friday of who was there, like all these dignitaries, ministers and everything. We even had Japanese consulates there and our Cook Island consulate. And I was just thinking, what other festival, secondary school festival, has these kinds of people rock up every year? You know, besides for a photo op or, and I know majority of them aren't there for that. They are coming to look around, but sometimes that's all that people see though. It's perception that they're there just to take a photo and to walk around. But it's being able to have the opportunity to talk to them directly. But I even said that to one of the ministers when I first started pitching for money at the beginning of last year. I said, whether like he kind of likened us to Big Sing, saying that we're similar to Big Sing, and went, no, we're not like Big Sing. We're not like another secondary school event. Those school events don't get the Prime Minister turning up every year, you know. So yeah, it was like I was thinking, man, they really don't understand us. They don't understand Polyfest.
Why do you think these dignitaries come to Polyfest every year?
I mean, for some of them, they're coming because they have invested. Their ministry has put in funding or they've put in people to work alongside us. But every year this is my 9th season, so every year when I'm speaking to them, I feel like I'm a broken record. When I'm trying to explain to them again, I've struggled to apply for funding or to the funding that I have gained. I've worked really hard to get it for this festival and having to justify why we need it. So when they do come and we invite all of them, it's because I want them to see for themselves with their own eyes why we do what we do and who it's for, and come and watch our young people on those stages, because that's the only way you're going to understand it, rather than reading something on a piece of paper and looking at our stats, looking at our numbers, our budget. Come see for yourself. And they always do rock up. They do come, but I just pray they're really hearing and seeing, what this festival means to our young people in their communities.
Seuli Terry Leo Mau has hosted 4 Prime Ministers: Sir Bill English, Dame Jacinda Ardern, Chris Hipkins, and this year Christopher Luxon, plus 2 Governors-General, Dame Cindy Kiro and Dame Patsy Reddy. During this time, Stephen Hargraves has been the chair of Polyfest. Steve is also the principal at Maclean's College in Bucklands Beach.
I think we're almost at a stage now where we need to begin discussing, what happens next. We've almost outgrown the facilities at the velodrome. getting very difficult to manage traffic-wise and participation numbers and how many stages we can fit in on the site there. We've got some hard conversations, I think, just about how many days we run for and how we accommodate everybody on site.
Hard conversations with who, Steve?
Well, mostly at board level, but then there's another very key group, the stage managers. We call Committee Whakahaere. They bring all of the representatives from the stage together. And then, of course, it is a school festival, so it involves principals and schools because, without the commitment from schools and the principals, then, you actually don't have a festival.
So what makes those conversations hard?
Well, it could see, look, I'm just putting things out there that nobody has really sat around the table and discussed. Diversity Stage is, a relatively new addition to the festival when you compare, think that it's 50 years old. And they now have the most groups and a huge number of nationalities represented. I think it was 28 different nationalities represented on Diversity Stage. How can we accommodate the continuing growth there, because they actually had to be split across 2 stages and that made it really difficult for them to manage. Can we go to an extra day? And I know that puts pressure on schools. Attendance is a very big thing. We don't want to be pulling kids out of school for any more time than necessary. I think those are hard conversations because it's going to either disappoint some people or mean that people need to make compromises.
Just explain that to me a little bit more. Why would people be disappointed? Because you're going to have to cut back on what the offer is, or because It's going to have to change? You're going to have to cut back?
Well, if our capacity is being reached, and I think we are getting towards that stage, then you can't just keep growing, can you? So it means, okay, so what are the restrictions? If we need shorter performances, then somebody's going to be disappointed with that. If it means it's a first in, first served, and you have to register by, the end of January, and if you come in after that, sorry, you can't get in. We've got to find a way of probably just managing the numbers, and if it's not about cutting schools out, then it means shorter performances. And of course, kids work incredibly hard for months and months putting these things together, and if we tell them you can't have 15 minutes anymore, you've only got 10, then that obviously just probably is a little disappointing for them.
It sounds like an interesting problem to have where you're potentially curbing the growth. Is this focus or these considerations that you're having as the chair of Polyfest to do with the way the event is funded?
Well, funding is really important. Building the infrastructure each year on the site is costly. The stages themselves have a huge amount of scaffolding and covering, and the pack in and pack down is time-consuming and expensive. It would be lovely just to be able to build more stages, but there's the cost element and the capacity aspect as well on the site. I don't know if your question was actually leading into what's the funding situation. The accounts are still being tallied up for this year's festival. We're hopeful we'll break even. We should be around that point, which is pleasing. We're a non-profit, obviously. It's not about making money, but we do need to break even, and the last couple of years we have not done that. And we did have some tiny reserves that are now burned. So we do need to break even, to keep the festival financially viable.
I was speaking with Sauli and she mentioned $1.7 million as the break-even number. Is that how you understand that figure?
Yes, so the operating costs of the festival are at about that point. We did have some other activities happening this year because it was the 50th celebration, and there was some additional cost and sponsorship, actually, that came along with the 50th. But yeah, the operating costs are about that amount each year. And of course, I've been involved with the Trust for about 9 years now. And when I first became involved, the operating costs were about $1 million to put the festival on. So they've almost doubled in that time.
And looking forward, because Sauli also mentioned needing to have twice that much money to operate, is that to service the dream of the growth of Polyfest, or is that actually what's really needed and there are a number of things that aren't covered with cash?
Well, that's probably a bit of an ideal state. If we had that sort of money, then we wouldn't be scrimping and saving. I mean, you probably know that Sauli, we don't have an office as such. We're operating out of the ops team operating out of Sauli's house. We gave up an office to function this year. We do rely on a lot of goodwill from volunteers and people dipping into their own pockets to meet small expenses here and there around their groups and stages. And that's kind of how schools operate, actually, to some extent, but it's probably not how it should be. Yeah, look, for me, the biggest issue with funding is the fact that almost all of our agreements, apart from ASB, are single-year arrangements. And it means we've got to go every single year to every single funder to make an agreement, if we can, strike an agreement with what funding they would provide for that year. And it does mean that there is a lot of uncertainty in how we operate. Thankfully, ASB signed a 3-year agreement as our naming rights sponsor, and that at least gives you certainty, gives us certainty around, we can continue to pay our bills through the off-season thanks to that arrangement. But, yeah, going every year to each funder poses a lot of difficulties because we actually don't know what answer we might get. And, of course, sometimes people say no, or sometimes they say we're going to give a lot less, and that's certainly been the case the last 2 years, just with the economic situation, and that makes it really difficult to plan the event.
Is central government, is local government giving enough to this event?
Well, I mean, what's enough? Look, we know that we are in a long line of people with their hand out to fund their activity. It's public knowledge. Everybody sees it in the media these days that, the government is strapped for cash. Councils are strapped for cash. They have infrastructure projects to build and schools, roads and hospitals to fund and all of these things. So we do get funding from Auckland Council and from Otara Papatoetoe Local Board. We're very grateful for that. And then we have some central government funders as well. Creative NZ, ACC actually came on board as well. MB, Ministry for Pacific Peoples, and they come through. And I guess we have to present a value proposition to them to make it worth their while. And I think we have made that value proposition. I'm just not sure the money has matched that. And I can elaborate on that. I mean, I think Polyfest provides community engagement, school engagement. There's all of those positive pro-social benefits of having children and young people involved in connecting with their heritage. They can get NCEA credits. It's a very strong motivator for getting to school. Attendance is an issue. It builds student leadership. It grows good young people, and it tells this intergenerational story of all of these positive things that have happened over 50 years with Polyfest. I mean, an interesting thing is we always have a huge number of local councillors, politicians, and central government politicians of every party attend in numbers every year. This year we had the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, we had the Leader of the Opposition, we had MPs in large numbers. And I can only assume that means that they see value in this event and they want to be seen supporting this event. And they do with their presence, but it would be nice to see that matched in financial terms.
Does it worry you that Polyfest won't go ahead because of this year-to-year search for the money?
Yeah, it's quite stressful, actually. It is a concern, the fact that we don't actually have all the money in the bank at the time we press go and commit to the next year's festival, and that is not a sustainable way to run an enterprise. We are still rounding up money as the event takes place. Well, look, and some of that's natural because we have gate sales that come through the door, and we're heavily reliant on those. And that's why I was particularly worried about the weather on the Friday of the event, because if that kept people away, then that impacts gate takings. And, if we have, say, 10,000 fewer people through the gate, then that's $75,000 that we don't receive, and then the event won't break even. So, they're fine margins that we're talking about for the financial sustainability of the event.
So when will you know when you've broken even for Polyfest 2025?
It's probably still a month or so away. We do have an insurance claim in because of the extra costs we incurred just dealing with the weather. We've got a little bit of remediation around the site to do and a few extra bits of equipment we needed to keep the site safe on the Friday and the Saturday because of the weather. So we're probably still a good month or so away, but early indications are that we should break even, and fingers crossed we do.
One of Polyfest's sponsors, the Ministry of Pacific Peoples, has provided $500,000 in total to the festival over the past 10 years. No government department has handed out more than $100,000 a year. In spite of that, Secretary for Pacific Peoples, Geraldine Clifford-Lidstone, acknowledges that Polyfest is more than an event.
It's a space where our young Pacific people, their families can uplift their community, can express their identity with pride and build their confidence in leadership. And this is all done in performance, so it's fantastic.
The ministry this year provided $60,000 towards the speech competition at the festival, and the same amount is promised for 2030. But what happens in between to make sure it has some sustainable funding? Geraldine says the ministry will be working with organisers over the next year to get clarity on where the gaps are and how they can be addressed.
Because we don't want them to be doing this year on, year on, year on. We do want to be working with them to understand how do we stop this from becoming a significant issue for them. And often, we need to look at things like size and scale and how much is it going to grow? How do we project that? How do we start to plan for that? There's no two ways about it. The ministry really believes that this is a really important event and that we want to continue to support it. But as any entity that is getting bigger and bigger, at various points in the development, we need to gain a deeper understanding of the operating model. We've had lots of requests from other agencies like the Pacific Business Trust, for example, who say, can they come in and offer support? And so these are some of the discussions that we would like to talk to the organisers about, because I think if we just focus on the fundraising, we lose the importance of how this is such a large-scale, important event for our community, a taonga for our communities across the Pacific community in New Zealand, but also in the region. So how then do we work together to make sure that we build a future-facing model and support its ongoing impact? I think just saying we can fund this over the next 5 years is too simple. The more complex thing is how do we grow this, continue to grow this so that it's sustained into perpetuity, or as long as our Pacific community need it.
And ASB Polyfest has committed to delivering the festival next year, even with the uncertainty around finances. That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. This episode was engineered by Jeremy Ansell and produced with the help of Davina Zimmer and Alexia Russell. Thanks to Seuli Terry Leo Mau, Stephen Hargraves and Geraldine Clifford-Lidstone. I'm Leia Tawalesa Susana Leia Tawa, on loan to The Detail from RNZ. Tō whāsoi fua.